Hey, this is Michael Douglas, not the Michael Douglas, at the Mike Doug on Twitter, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Yes, hello. It is back again. It's the Dynasty Hotseat. It is the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified inferno. And this week we're so lucky to have Michael Douglas here with us to share his wealth of knowledge on the game of Dynasty Fantasy Football. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, and can't wait to hear what you've got in store for us today. How you doing?
You're welcome, Connor. Thank you. Following someone who has Dynasty NFL Guru in their Twitter handle is not easy, but we'll give it a go. We'll go from riches to rags maybe this week, but we'll see.
Super. So, Mike, we're just going to start off with some hints and tips that you've got for anybody listening about, what you like to do whenever you're playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, and what you think some important things are to keep in mind.
Yeah, cool. So interestingly enough for me, compared to yourself and Alex as well, I think the Dynasty League that I'm in with you is the only one I've ever played, essentially. And that's was just the second season. So I'd played redraft leagues with a few of the same people in that league, so for quite a while now. And obviously I've been an NFL fan since, I'm showing my age, but since the sort of late 80s, early 90s sort of thing. So it's always been something that appealed to me. And I think doing the redraft league is kind of a good grounding. But for me with Dynasty, I find it really interesting because I really struggled in the first season, and the draft, I kind of maybe wasn't quite what I wanted. But I think the things I've learned, so for me, when I was thinking about tips for today, I was thinking, the word that popped into my head was balance. Like, you're always looking for balance, right? No matter whether that's, when you're doing your draft, are you looking at the season ahead? Are you looking 2 seasons ahead, 3 seasons ahead? What can you do? What can you fix? What can you kind of hit straight away and sort of thing? But also in terms of balance as you're playing, because I think you'll always identify your strengths and weaknesses almost straight away after that initial draft. And then you'll kind of already have in mind what you're looking at the end of that season. And I think I've heard you talk about it, but identifying those guys that are coming up this year and sort of saying, can I identify them straight away? Can I do that research and find out what's coming, And I was really strong at wide receiver. It was my first season. I found that the draft, the way it fell, the position I was really strong at wide receiver. I didn't think I could win that first season. I definitely didn't. I almost finished bottom. But the second season, I think I managed to add some depth at running back. I managed to add some depth at QB, and then I kind of was able to make a trade. And that kind of brings me on to the second thing that I was thinking about when I thought about what I like to do when I'm playing Dynasty. And I put know your enemy, because for me, I think it's so important because it's not redraft, and because everyone starts with a sort of structure. So the core of your team, everyone's got their core, and that's their core going forward now. It's not going to change next year. You can get to know everyone's team. You can get to know the people that you're playing with behavior as well, which I think is such a big thing, because there will be, every league has this. There'll be someone who just flings trades at you constantly, whether they know you, whether they've never met you in their life.
That's me.
You're waving at me now to kind of indicate that that's you, but there will be those people, and I think you get to know that, and you can hopefully use it to your advantage. And you got to know that everyone's doing it for you as well. I think I'm someone who's played that quite tight in my experience so far in Dynasty, in terms of trying to make that trade. When I touched on the kind of squad that I have, there was a big trade in our league where I ended up with Austin Eckler, and I gave up quite a lot of draft capital. Was that your?
That was with me.
Who it was.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was one of those things where the trade ended up working. It was a trade that ended up working for everyone, and going back and forth on it, identifying that Eckler would help me. I had a chance to win this season. I made the playoffs, and I knew that midway through, I thought, I've got a chance here. This trade could really help me. And I think that's the thing about knowing everyone and knowing that they'll come back and what they need and what you need is really important. And identifying your league and just keeping track of other results as well. It's really easy to kind of set your lineup, watch your score, and then be happy or sad and get ready for the waiver, the next week. Keeping an eye on the rest of the league is such a big thing for me.
Absolutely. Like even the trade you just talked about, where I think I was sending Austin Eckler and getting back, I think, Jerry Jeudy and some picks on top of that. I was in a position where I think my IR was full, and then I had people spilling over onto my bench who were still injured. So I thought, the exact opposite of you. I was like, well, I'm not going to win this year. There's no chance I can do it. So what am I going to do? I need to sell my oldest running back, Eckler, because he's still got a lot of value. So I need to get him out the door and think about how I will replace him. And there's no point in me replacing him this year. So I thought, well, I'll get some picks for down the line and maybe a young receiver just on top of that. So you're right. It's all about knowing your enemy and knowing your team. That's the second week now. Shang Shu has come up from the RO.
I know. I don't have the book here. I've got the Beastie Boys book down there somewhere, but that's about the. I don't think there's any tips for fantasy, but maybe there is.
You never know. You dig deep enough.
I think the last thing for me, and it leads off of that, what we just talked about, is kind of don't be stubborn. Is one of the big things for me. Is kind of, do you know what? You might have a plan at the start, but I think, was it Mike Tyson? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, And I think like if you've got that plan, be ready to change it, And that goes for everything. Goes for your draft. You might be sitting mock drafting in a certain position. You come to the real thing, it doesn't go your way. Don't be stubborn. Don't get caught up doing something you don't want to do. Same with trades. Same with cutting people from your roster as well. Especially, I think that's such a big thing that I've found in Dynasty in year 2 now. Is you've unearthed a few hidden gems, but your roster's almost full, and then you're looking ahead to what's coming soon and who can I get rid of here? And one of the ones, and we'll probably talk about him as we go forward, but my initial draft, I grabbed Gabe Davis. And now there's been times that I've thought, is he going to make the grade here? Is he going to come good? And then back end of this season, you go, there's no way I'm getting rid of him. He's in place for quite a while now. So things like that, I think your stubbornness can cost you, and that's, I think, trades wise especially, it can be really easy just to click no, without considering and having a look and what can I go back with and being there, rather than saying, no, I really like this guy. I want to keep hold of him, don't be too stubborn.
No, I think that's 3 really, really important things to consider. Just, no one should be, on your team for life. Sometimes an offer is just too good to turn down, and you don't want to just not consider someone just because you like that player. Or you also, on the flip side of your Gabe Davis situation, you might have a situation where you're thinking, oh, this player's here, are they going to come good? Are they coming good? If you get rid of them, then whoever picks them up has now just got the exact same problem, and they've got this difficult situation to deal with. So I think at the start I was worried if I released someone would automatically just snap them up, and it doesn't always happen. Sometimes they just sit on waivers and you can pick them up again or move them around again. So it's being brave enough not to be stubborn. I think that's absolutely spot on.
That's it. The goldfish stuff as well, like dropping a guy and just forgetting about him. Don't keep track of him, where he goes and how he beats you or anything like that. He's gone. Just move on, like figure out your forward momentum rather than what you could have had, sort of thing.
I've still got to do that with Antonio Brown in our league. I still haven't dropped him, but that'll be in the next few days thing. Okay, brilliant. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your top tips. In the next section, we're going to put you in the hot seat for a mock draft.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so here we are, and we got Mike in the hot seat. How's that seat feeling, Mike? You comfortable?
Urban Meyer in October, like hot, really hot.
So hopefully you'll do a bit better than Urban did. So let's
I'm not sure. If I end up with in the pub with people dancing around me, I'll be quite happy. But
yeah, actually, that's true. Things could be worse than that. You're right.
exactly.
The first thing I'm going to ask you to do, Mike, is we obviously have the same as the previous episodes. We got our Superflex Startup Dynasty Draft. We got 12 teams in total. We got 18 rounds. The first question I'm going to ask you is, what is your ideal starting position for a startup draft?
Tricky one. I've never done a 12-teamer, so it's really interesting. For me, I don't mind being kind of round the corner. So whether that's late in the first round or early in the first round, and then hitting the corners on the way back. So I'll probably go position 2. To be honest, I think I would take that. And I'm not known for getting the luck of the draw and ending up high, so I think we might as well have a go and see how it works out.
Nice. Let's go with position 2 then, and we'll get straight into it.
Makes the first part really easy as well. So
yeah, exactly. You got a choice of 2 here, I think, pretty much. So
exactly,
whatever one you got, you'll be happy with. So here we go. So Patrick Mahomes is the first pick of the draft, and
so you're looking at me like you know what I'm going to say, and I'm not going to disappoint anyone. But be really predictable and take Josh Allen. I think he's the perfect dynasty quarterback right now with his weapons that he has. You know that whole sort of rushing ability that he showed off, especially this season late on. You can build around that for quite a while. They're not going to be bad anytime soon.
Do you think there is an argument that Josh Allen should actually be taken ahead of Patrick Mahomes at this stage, or think he needs another season?
I think it's. I wouldn't be disappointed if someone took him before and you ended up with Mahomes either. You know, I think like you end up with either of those. I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off in terms of what they produce for quite a while at this moment. So I think they're kind of 1 and 1A right now.
I completely agree. Yeah, I quite like rankings when you see people almost don't do rankings and they do like tiers. And I think Mahomes and Allen are up there on a tier, you know, of their own, definitely. So yeah, like you said, 1A and 1B. So let's lock in Josh Allen and see what else comes off the board. I assume lots of quarterbacks. Yeah, Herbert and Murray coming off the board, and then we'll see how we're looking. What's quite nice about this app, it updates. The more people use it, the more the ADP kind of updates, which is nice. So it gets more and more, you know, reliable as time goes on. So we're swinging around the snake here. We got lots of quarterbacks as we thought coming off the board, and then your usual star running backs and star wide receivers like AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, all coming off the board. So now it's back to you. And
it's really interesting here. Yeah, really interesting for me because it is whether you like. I'm looking in front of me, seeing Russell Wilson as that kind of locks up 2 really solid QB spaces. Although wondering where he's going to be is obviously a thing right now as well. And I don't think you're going to not get production from Russell Wilson, but you do have to kind of just bear those things in mind. Nick Chubb, Kamara, I mean, really topical, obviously today, and then Austin Eckler, you know. And I think for me, I would lock up Nick Chubb right here. I think I can get that second quarterback coming around the corner if I want to, or see where I'm at wide receiver. I'm looking down already at a couple that should be available as I come back around the corner. So for me, I think I would take Nick Chubb here, just due to Cleveland's running game. I think you don't even have to worry about the split in carries with Nick Chubb because the guy's just an absolute bell cow. He's unbelievable. So for me, it'd be Chubb.
Nick Chubb, great choice. So let's lock in Nick Chubb and see who we got coming around the corner. So Nick Chubb's gone. And then Alvin Kamara just went alongside. I think a quarterback come off. It was Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Sneaked away. So, Mike, I'm also able to, on this app, to just filter to show you just quarterbacks or just running backs or just wide receivers or just tight ends, as if you're thinking about certain positions. So at the minute, we got Eckler and Metcalf at the top of the list, and some quarterbacks. You got Stafford and Justin Fields, along with Kyle Pitts standing out there as the only tight end at the top.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think Pitts stands out because of like just the position, being really strong at the position. He's only going to get better, I think.
Yes.
And I mean, Ryan's going to be there, still throwing to him, and it's still, whatever you think of Matt Ryan, he's still a guy who can get the ball to his targets.
Absolutely.
And where Atlanta are at, they're probably going to be throwing the ball quite a bit just now. So I think that one stands out. Interestingly enough, I think Fields really stands out for me at this point. Mm-hmm. Again, that kind of regime change has to be built to get the best out of this guy, and I think they really, it's what everyone wants from Chicago, and I'm thinking in that kind of real life sort of picture. But I always talk about balance, and I talked about balance earlier. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for Stephon Diggs here because I like that kind of Diggs Allen hookup. I like what Diggs gives you, and straight away I've got a number one QB and number one receiver on a team that produce really big points. So I would go and lock up Stephon Diggs here. Yeah,
I love that the 1-2 punch of Diggs and Allen. That'll win you so many games alone. So I'm loving the shot there of Stephon Diggs. So let's get him locked up and see who else comes off the board. You got, as predicted, you got your star running backs coming off like Eckler and Gibson and Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, some older quarterbacks, but still will get the job done. There's Kyle Pitts going as we thought. And as we're sort of coming around the bend now, are you thinking anything in mind, or are you paying close attention to who's coming off the board?
Yeah, I'm sort of looking. I'm seeing a few, the little tight end rush kind of started there. And, with Travis Kelce and that going. So I think here, knowing I've got kind of two of the next 5 selections, I've already got a QB, a running back, a wide receiver. I'm in a good place for kind of number ones. So do I kind of accentuate that and build the number 2s, or do I get a number 1 at another position? Because I look on the screen, I'm seeing Mark Andrews and Darren Waller at tight end, which is really interesting for me, because I know I can get one of them in the next 2 picks if I really want them. QB wise, I'm seeing Tannehill, Tua, and Mac Jones. Honestly, to me, Tannehill and Tua, they don't really scream grab me now. I think there's plenty of options coming. I'm a Patriots fan, so Mac Jones, obviously I like being linked with him, but one of those dynasty things is don't be blinded by your colors.
Do you think with Mac Jones as well could possibly end up being a better NFL quarterback than he is a dynasty quarterback?
I think that's exactly right. I think what he will do, especially the next kind of 2 to 3 years, hopefully, all being well with him, is he'll build into the system, and they'll trust him to throw a bit more. I definitely think that. But like you say, I think that 200 to 250 yards, maybe 2 or 3 TDs, with the way that New England run the ball and the line that they have, should be enough for them to win games in that division, especially. So I think what I'm going to do is it's really tough actually. I'm going to go and I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins actually of Arizona, and I think for me again a pure number 1 target, and not a number 1 target that you have to worry about being taken out of the game. This guy can beat everyone. And I think the injury stuff does worry a little bit. In the last couple of seasons, he's maybe been affected a little bit. But for me, if I take DeAndre Hopkins, I have a real solid triangle of 2 receivers and a QB. So I would lock in DeAndre Hopkins here.
Yeah, great shot. You're going to go into most weeks here. You're going to have Diggs and Hopkins, and you're not going to need to worry about it. You're going to play them every single week because they're both that good. So loving the shot of DeAndre Hopkins. Let's get him locked in. And our next pick is real soon. So here we go. Pause the draft. Let's just see who came off the board there. David Montgomery, interesting.
Interesting. I did have my eye kind of drawn to him. So I think running back's really interesting on the screen for me. There's kind of 4 there that you've got Akers, who kind of looked good as he came back at the back end of this year. I think he's the guy that the Rams really want to use as their number one. I think so. That's an interesting one with that offense. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason, but with that offense, the running game, if they get ahead early, then he really could really milk the points sort of later in games. Etienne, obviously down there at Jacksonville, is the kind of unknown quantity, having missed the whole season. So I wouldn't take a chance on him. For me, I'm going to go straight to the top of what we're seeing right now, and that's Mark Andrews at tight end. I can lock up an absolute prime receiver here. He's essentially a receiver for them. I think he plays the position more than a tight end. So Mark Andrews for me is a no-brainer, and it locks up my tight end spot.
Yeah, and I mean, you're now in, what round are we in now? That was just the fifth round, and you've just got 5 absolutely solid. You know, you can lock them in your team and not worry about any kind of risk here. It's just, really, really solid. And you can now maybe look at, taking some more risks later on in the draft now that you've got, super solid players locked in your first 5 picks. So now we're getting to see some really interesting people coming off the board. Elijah Moore coming off in round 6. You can just see how much his value has skyrocketed from, just last season, going ahead of people like Amari Cooper and Michael Pittman. Yeah,
absolutely.
So here we are on the board now, and you can see it's a bit of a mixed bag. Who you got? You got some of your lower end quarterbacks and some real interesting wide receivers and running backs as well.
Yeah. So I think for me now, looking at kind of running, I've got running back, quarterback in my head, right? Because those are my 2 kind of starting spots now that I don't kind of have yet in that sort of flex position running quarterback. Sorry. So I think those are the 2 that kind of stick out for me. Guys like Cousins and Carr are still there, really available. Carson Wentz, who had a decent season. Baker at Cleveland. Again, having Chubb, I've got that kind of 1-2 punch if I want to go there. The guy at the top, again, for me, just sticks out. And if I want to add that second running back, Josh Jacobs, I think there's not a whole lot of... There's some options behind him, but Jacobs is fit, and it coincided with Vegas's best run of the season, right? The last 4 or 5 games, every game was a playoff game. He was central to everything they did. They were missing Waller. They had to have that run game going, and he was getting that run game going, and he was winning big games for them. So to me, I take Josh Jacobs in this position right now and fill out my running backs.
Yeah, I mean, and such a late 6th round pick, still having Josh Jacobs there is quality value. So I think you've got a great shot there, Josh Jacobs. Let's get him locked in, and it'll quickly be our turn again as we see Miles Sanders coming off the board along with TJ Hawkinson, one of my favorite players. So now, you were thinking quarterback and running back before. Are you thinking quarterback now, or are you thinking go elsewhere?
So as I look at it, I'm actually thinking I've got 3 wide receivers, Judy, Bateman, and Brown. Again, I probably don't want to... I'm now starting to think about the setup of my team, right? So I've got Andrews, he's a target man. Bateman and Brown, you're fighting for targets now, right? So you've got receiving guys on the same team. So I'm looking at quarterback, but I'm looking down the line, funnily enough, and I'm seeing the guy, Damian Harris, who's sticking out, and I think he's really good. Obviously, the one rule that I've always lived by as a Patriots fan is you just can't trust Patriot running backs in fantasy, because they could turn up and not get a carry, and Bill just fancies someone else that day, So the wide receiver stuff is interesting, but I think for me, I'm going to go and take Baker in this position because I think there's value to be had later on in a kind of taking a chance on a third QB. But I think if I'm looking at that balance thing I talked about, Allen's that linchpin for me going forward in this Dynasty League. And I think Mayfield could help me win this season. Mayfield has to have a good season this season. So if I'm looking at that 1-2 punch of, I've got the guy to build around, I've got the guy Mayfield, that if it doesn't go right for me, then I can do something later on in Dynasty.
Excellent shot. Yeah, Baker Mayfield there. I mean, you just think he's going to have a better season just because the amount of injuries that he had last year. He's got the off season to get healthy, and the talent is definitely there. So you'd think a better season is coming for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And then, as you talked about, those young receivers and Damian Harris, Judy and Harris are the next two that come straight off the board. I always think it's really interesting you're drafting, a position 1 or 2, because it does seem to be an eternity sometimes before you get back around to it. And you just see people coming off and you go, oh, yeah. What's interesting, Ramondre Stevenson coming off very quickly after Harris.
Yeah.
So here we are back around again. Okay. So let's just have a look as we're going into round 8. You've got your team here. So at the minute you got your 2 quarterbacks, your 2 running backs, your 2 wide receivers, and a tight end. So you were talking about balance before, and that's almost as balanced as you can get going into this part. So you got Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, and Mark Andrews. So what are you thinking next?
So I'm thinking I could go anywhere now, and I think that's what that balance gives you. I think there's kind of, by doing these drafts, and everyone listening knows that when you do these drafts, you're gonna let that know your enemy thing. You're gonna have people who've gone QB, or even more. 3 wide receivers, 3 running backs, something like that. Really gone for it on that, and I think that's great. You get that value at the start. You get some really absolute A1 class talent at the start, but I think having that balance in place after the kind of starting lineups fill out just means I can go anywhere now. I can react to anything that happens in the draft. I can, if someone's there, I don't have a fear of picking them up because I've already got 2 or 3 of these guys. And again, it's that not being stubborn that I'm talking about sort of thing. Whereas now I can kind of go anywhere and be happy with it. Allen Robinson really is such a wild card. I know you've discussed this before. I think for me it's that whole thing of, this guy could go anywhere and be the best receiver on that team and just have a breakout season. And that really kind of sticks out. Running back wise, I think where we're at just now, Tony Pollard and Darrell Henderson. Talked about Cam Akers before and how that would affect Henderson. And these are 2 number 2s, I think, and I want number 2s just now. I can take a chance on number 2s later on, sort of thing. So for me, I'm going to go the wild card here and take Allen Robinson off the board, and I think that's what I would do right here. Just I've got receivers that I'm okay playing ahead of him. He's perfect for me because that could turn out to be real value.
Yeah, that is perfect. It's exactly what we just talked about earlier. Whenever you took DeAndre Hopkins, it just opens up that freedom for you to take a bit of a gamble going forward. And Allen Robinson seems like a pretty good gamble to me. You never know. He could end up on the Giants playing with Russell Wilson next season, and then you're laughing. So Allen Robinson, I think, is a really good gamble at this stage. Let's lock him in. And we got our next pick coming up right away. As Mike Williams and Rondale Moore leave the board. So again, seems like a bit of a clog of quarterbacks available. You got Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, and Tom Brady is still on there. Should you want to just have him just to say you had him?
Yeah, he can retire in my team instead of as a Buccaneer. So which is cool. So I think for me, strangely enough, and this whole thing about reacting to things, I look at the wide receivers that are listed there, and I've got Thielen, Beckham, Woods, Cooks, and Schuster sort of sitting right in front of me, even Mooney down there. And I think Adam Thielen screams out to me right now. If I select him, I'm just looking at the makeup of my team. Wide receiver goes on the back burner for me then for a while. And I'm really happy. I know there's a lot of picks between this and my next pick, but I can take a chance on some running backs kind of late on and see how they pan out for me. So I'm going to lock in Adam Thielen here, weirdly enough, and really sew up that wide receiver position for my team.
Yeah, it's I think he's there obviously because of his age, but we talked about risk, and Thielen, seems such a safe bet, So again, you got so many safe wide receivers in there now that you can take more and more risk going forward. So let's see. We got a bit of a tight end rush there with Goddard and Gesicki and Dawson Knox coming off the board as well, along with some of those, and Hunter Henry. Wow, along with some of those running backs we talked about, and Tom Brady coming off the board. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's quite nice. This the app does update, so he'll be taken later and later and later as more people use it. Okay, so cool. Another mini quarterback rush there with Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, and Jimmy G coming off the board at the end there. And some interesting wide receivers still here, some interesting quarterbacks. Yeah. Jordan Love, who I think will be the most fascinating person to see where people are drafting him this offseason, because so no one knows what it's going to look like.
I own Jordan Love in our league, so I had him. I got him when he was first drafted. So having him eat up that bench spot, and you're just wondering, I just need to know, at some point I need to know, is he going to be the guy, or is he going to? Is he not? I mean, what we've seen so far, obviously, we're all still unsure. I think for me in this position, there is some wide receivers that do really scream kind of value. Amon-Ra, I everyone's on that bandwagon now, and rightly so. There's he's not a flash in the pan. You can see it. The guy's real here. So again, in Dynasty, I've got Cordarrelle and James Conner. Not going to be building blocks for going forward, but again, they could shore up that position. I think if I have a look at the tight end position, if that's all right,
of course.
If you lock in there, I'm going to go there. I think, because I think for me, Cole Kmet is quite a good option here. He's a guy who's looked, just with the more he's played, he's looked a safer pair of hands for Chicago, and he's looked like that kind of safety net for Fields in the right spots. Irv Smith, I really like the look of him as well. He's someone that I think going forward he'll climb. I think his ADP is just going to climb as we get closer to the season. For me, I'm going to go Cole Kmet here. I think I really like what I saw from him last season, and I think he'll be that guy that kind of ends up their real sort of safety blanket for Fields, as I said.
Yeah, and I think as Fields moves forward into his first full season as well, that chemistry is just going to grow and grow. And Cole Kmet, I think, really good shot there as your second tight end as well. You already got Mark Andrews, so having Cole Kmet as well is a brilliant backup. So let's lock in Cole Kmet, and very, very quickly again we're going to be
we're coming back on the board. And all I'm thinking now is running backs now. All I'm thinking is, what can I get at running back now? So we look, and Alexander Mattison, I can't say it without singing the famous musical Alexander Hamilton, and it just works. It's just how I say his name. But guys like Chuba Hubbard, he was kind of the darling last year, and did really well in that position. And you're always wondering now with McCaffrey, is he gonna play 17 games? He hasn't showed it.
I almost wonder with McCaffrey sometimes if they could just play him, as a wide receiver. He's that good at receiving, and he's getting hurt so much when he's running. Then, he's a better wide receiver than he could be an Edelman.
He could be a Amendola sort of Edelman guy. Just really easy and make people miss. In that kind of tight space. So they're really interesting here just because of that. And again, the reason Mattison sort of screams out as well, because again, Cook, as someone who owned him in a league last season, you just don't know. There's going to be these moments. The guy's tough as nails, but he gets taken out of games. But for me, I'm going to drop down on the list that we're seeing at the moment a little bit and take Rashad Penny, because I think this is a guy who this season really showed what we've thought he could do for a couple of years, and got that chance and said, do you know what, I could be the man here. And for me, he's going to go on and do that. Whether I'm not sure of his contract situation, whether it's always going to be at Seattle, but I think for me, what I saw this season means I would take him here, because I think he can win a battle for that starting position.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially considering Chris Carson's come off a really serious neck surgery, which which is never good for anyone's long-term, professional athlete career. So I think Rashad Penny, if he looks anything like he did towards the end of the season, you've got a real steal here coming into the second half of the draft. So let's lock in Rashad Penny. And let's see who else goes off the board. People like Tyler Heineke, a really interesting quarterback. And then, some of those older guys like Patterson and James Conner who will do a good job for other teams. But as you say, they're serviceable maybe for this year, but not too much going forward. A bit of a wide receiver rush. You got some brave person taking Will Fuller. And then Alexander Madison almost came back around to
it's close actually.
Yeah. So I'll put in all the positions again so you can see what the lay of the land is like. You got people like Kenny Gainwell and Chuba Hubbard still there at running back, and then quite a few wide receivers like Gabe Davis we talked about earlier. He's still there, and some pretty poor quarterbacks you're probably going to want to avoid, I would imagine, with Tyrod Taylor and Drew Lock.
I think for me, the third quarterback can really wait now. Almost if I take one at this point in this sort of situation, but I mean we will see. I mean, for me again, I think Gainwell is a guy who's the momentum is up, right? So I think you want to be looking at these guys whose momentum is up the way, and I think a Philly team that surprised a lot of people making the playoffs this season. They're probably going to get better. That I think. That I think they will. I think that's going to help them. You make the playoffs, it gives you that boost, So for me, I think we go Gainwell here, and I think wide receiver and running back. I feel quite good about my kind of core now with him as well. So
nice, love a Kenny Gainwell, and you're probably going to get a situation at Philadelphia where Miles Sanders is probably going to get injured again next year, so Gainwell will get that shot. And I don't know if Boston Scott is still under contract. That was a bit weird that he was playing so much last year. I thought that was strange. But let's get Kenny Gainwell locked in. And again, a short wait as Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall come off the board. Yeah, like Terrace Marshall. Christian McCaffrey's a better receiver than Terrace Marshall, right? I couldn't think of his name. I was trying to remember, right? So here we are. Gabe Davis still on the board. DJ Chark, an interesting pick that's still available there, along with Irv Smith Jr. still on the board, who we talked about earlier, and some others.
Yeah, I think this one, I kind of like the fact now that I can really go anywhere. And like we said, I mean, the two QBs that are on the first page are Tyrod Taylor and Drew Lock. I'm probably not going to touch any of them at this point.
No.
Not in this round anyway. Gabe Davis, obviously I've got the kind of the Buffalo thing in my head. I've got Allen, I've got Diggs. Do I want to go there? And I think then same with Kirk. I've got Hopkins, and he's sort of there. So I think for me, I think I'm going to take DJ Chark here, because I think, like, you singled him out for a reason there, and you see his name at this stage of the draft, and you think, again, a team that can't be as bad, surely, with a new regime, but that will probably still have to throw the ball quite a lot. And DJ Chark is the guy you want, kind of winning those 50-50s and taking people on. So I think for me, DJ Chark here, and my wide receiver sort of pool becomes even stronger.
Yeah, completely agree. Attached to, Trevor Lawrence, who's shown maybe a slight glimmer of what he's capable of, but there's definitely so much more in the tank for Trevor Lawrence, and hopefully DJ Chark will be able to help him there. So I think that's a good shout. And again, round 13, that seems really late for DJ Chark. I mean, Terrace Marshall going ahead of him, that seems, a little off. That's another brave team takes Tyrod Taylor and Drew Lock, and we're starting to see now. I find this part of the draft really, really fascinating. I always think this is sometimes where leagues are won and lost with how you pick here in the last sort of five rounds, and just going for those gambles a lot of the time, and whenever they pay off, they can really win you a league sometimes. So let's see who we've got available here. We got, again, a mixed bag, no real quarterbacks turning up here, as you might expect. You got some tight ends like Logan Thomas and Dalton Schultz coming off a really strong season. Wide receivers, Van Jefferson and Sterling Shepard stand out a little bit there. And yeah, some running backs, your backups, as you would expect. So what are you thinking here?
Yeah, so thinking that I'm coming around the corner again, I'm kind of ruling out, like you said, there's no real QBs of note at this point to really kind of beef up that kind of division for me. So I think I'm thinking around the corner and I've got 2 of the next 4 picks. So I'll probably maybe take that another running back. I think that's probably where I'm going to go. I think I'm going to die on the hill here, and I'm going to die on the Mike Davis hill, because I think for me, I couldn't believe what happened to him last year. It was all set up. Everyone thought, he did that job backing up McCaffrey. He'd go somewhere, and then all of a sudden there was a kick returner / wide receiver playing running back who was putting up astronomical numbers. This is based on that bubble bursting and Mike Davis being that reliable guy who will come out of the backfield and play 2 or 3 downs. And I think he gets the chance to do it. And if he doesn't, he's down my depth chart, right? So I can take the chance on him at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even seen towards the end of the year, the Cordero Patterson started to fade a bit the last couple of games. So people maybe started to figure him out. So maybe it is time that they go back, to reliable Mike Davis. And yeah, maybe that Patterson bubble does burst in and you got yourself an absolute steal here. So I like the shot with Mike Davis. Let's get him put in. And like you said, you got 2 of the next couple of picks. So we're right back on the board here as Kenyon Drake and Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas, who obviously missed most last season, comes off the board. So pretty much the same selection.
Yeah, we're not far off. So I think for me here, I'm starting to look at what sort of depth can I get at position. And if we look at the QBs here, I think I'm starting to think about I need to add something possibly just to have that kind of third guy. And I mean, I'm definitely not going to pick Ben Roethlisberger, but I think there's guys here. I know on your last episode, Ian Book was mentioned quite a bit, and again, a guy I really like, but I probably won't take him here. I don't think he's going to come off the board before my next couple of picks. Anyway, and then I'm looking at, Kyle Trask's a really interesting one here because, again, the amount of picks between this and my next pick, I'm not sure that he will still be there. He may still be there. I'm taking a chance if I don't pick him here. He's a guy who, at the moment, the time we're doing this draft, you can only rely on the information you have. He's the guy who looks like he may start for Tampa Bay. He's the guy who looks like he could be throwing the ball to some really good weapons and to a team that's really well structured. So I think for me, it's a slight reach, I think, but because it's that third QB, I think I'll take Kyle Trask here, just knowing that I can get a 4th that even just sort of beefs that up towards the end as well.
Yeah, I think good shot as well. And something that doesn't really get mentioned about Kyle Trask a lot is he's learned from Tom Brady this whole time. You imagine Tom Brady has been thinking, retirement is coming up, and you would like to think if you're Kyle Trask, you're just hanging around him and soaking things up like a sponge. So who knows what he's going to look like, but if he's learned anything from Tom Brady, he's probably going to look pretty good. So I'm liking this pick of Kyle Trask.
Jimmy G okay, so it served Jimmy G okay. So
so we got a few tight end rush again coming off the board as people think Gronk's going to stick around with Brady, which unlikely. Nicole Hardman coming off the board, frustrating fantasy player. Nicole Hardman, very hard to know when to play him. And
I own Nicole Hardman in our league, and I've been forced to play him this season. And I think there was 2 consecutive weeks where I was forced to play him, and the first week he scored 2 point something, and the next week he scored 18 or something like that. Yeah. So that's him in a nutshell.
That is just the exact type of player that he is. I think Alex last week mentioned he was like, he'll end up on the Ravens. It's like, you're 100% right. That's exactly where he's going to end up.
That's true.
Okay, so this is us back on the board here. I'll show us all positions available with Tyler Higbee at the top there at tight end, and going through some interesting people. Like you got Nico Collins and a T.Y. Hilton, a wide receiver, and then a whole gang of running backs here. Again, a lot of them sort of backup roles. A lot of them may not be relevant, and some of them worth a gamble.
Yeah, exactly. I think I look down the list and you see a guy like James White who missed a lot of this season, but notoriously has been that kind of pass catching running back for New England, which in this format is always sort of useful. He's going to rack up some receptions, which can rack up some points. So I think in terms of depth, he's one that you'd look at. But again, the running back picture in New England is you've got two really good options now ahead of him. So does he get there? So I think Higbee, I mean, we're in the point now where is it best player available for me, because this is a guy who really had a good season. I mean, unfortunately, I would be lucky if he makes it this Sunday, I think. But he, for me, is a guy who I can't turn down in this position. I think Tyler Higbee tight end is completely locked up for me. If I have Andrews on bye, I've got really good options behind him now. So I would lock in Tyler Higbee here.
Yeah, I mean, Higbee is someone who you're not even going to be mad if he's your starting tight end, and for you to have him as your third choice here. Yeah, and again, you're right. Looking at the other players, Higbee is nailed on starter for his team, whereas the other guys here, maybe with the exception of Beasley and Collins, are not as nailed on as maybe they used to be in time gone by. So yeah, I love the pick here, Tyler Higbee. And yeah, you're right. You're sorted at tight end, and we're coming right back across here as some two receivers come off the board with Nico Collins and Amari Rodgers coming off the board. And yeah, we're right back at it now. Again, I can filter by position if you want, or if you're happy with.
No, I think I'm okay on this page. I think like you say, I think now you're really sort of scratching to say who can make an impact. Who could be the guy that if you have to plug him in, he could hit the jackpot for you. And the old campaigner for me sticks out a mile here is T.Y. Hilton. I think, to me, he proved even this season that he can sort of make things happen. And given that run of games, and that run of fitness, he'll do that. So I would take T.Y. Hilton here just to be that guy who if you have to take a flyer on him, there's every chance that Indy could deliver for you.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially with Carson Wentz, who just loves to chuck it around, and T.Y. Hilton seemed to be a favorite target of his. So yeah, you're right. If you're desperate or you're on a bye week 1 week, then you're not going to feel too bad about T.Y. Hilton because you've always got a chance with him hitting big. So T.Y. Hilton, in he goes. As we got some of these people we talked about, like Cole Beasley coming off the board, Darius Slayton, and then you're looking here, and there aren't too many players here. You're thinking, damn, it's very much okay. People like Kylan Hill coming off the board, and Gerald Everett is an interesting one there, I suppose. But Antonio Brown, that's definitely a player you see at the end of a draft. This year, I think people just taking a flyer on Antonio Brown. I think whenever we did our startup, just 2 years ago or over 2 years ago, I just thought, I'm just going to take a shot. And I think I took in our final round, I just went, I'll just draft Beast Mode and see if he comes back, because why not?
I think that's it. I think, like you say, you could draft these guys, and if they're not on a team at the start of the season, there's a possibility you lose your first game and you're first on the waiver wire, and you've got someone who's undrafted, and that person goes, and that's the weapon that you have in your arsenal with these squads and taking these flyers on people. So I think where we're at now, I think Tevin Coleman of the Jets, you know what, maybe, but do you want to? I think you just kind of really, for me now, it is kind of what's available, what's the best thing for me. Can I package up some of this stuff? Can I do anything at all with it? And I think I've got a good spread now of kind of different offenses as well that I think could be useful. So I think for me, Tim Patrick just at the top is who I would take here. I think he's a really good option. I think he's shown himself to be really valuable in that offense, which can be a bit muted at times, especially if Judy's having his struggles with fitness, but he obviously came back eventually. But I think Tim Patrick's a guy who he's one of those red zone guys, isn't he? His name pops up, right? And and you go, oh, it's Tim Patrick again, and you always hear the name. So I think I would go Tim Patrick here.
Yeah, I really liked him, but I think I said on the last podcast with Alex, I was like, he's just a real solid pro, and he just looks like he does everything right. He works really hard, and yeah, you're right. He's a red zone guy. His name keeps popping in. We're like, oh, Tim Patrick, and you look at it, it's like, how many points did you get this week? It's like, oh, Tim Patrick got 10 points again. It's like, oh, that's quite handy. And if Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball next year, then that's going to look a whole lot better, I imagine.
Yeah.
So let's go, Tim Patrick. Is that our last pick? Tim Patrick is in, and that is our final pick. So let's have a look at how the team is looking. We got 3 quarterbacks. We got Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, and Kyle Trask, a quarterback. Then we got a few running backs. We got Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, and Mike Davis in at running back. Wide receivers, we got Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Allen Robinson, Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, T.Y. Hilton, and Tim Patrick. Really strong wide receiver core there. And then the same with tight ends. Super, super strong. You got Mark Andrews, Cole Kmet, and Tyler Higbee. That is an excellent looking team, Mike. You happy enough for that?
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. I think funnily enough, I've talked about our league that started 2 years ago and how I ended up heavy at receiver and loaded at receiver, and I've done the same thing again. So it must just be how I do this. So I think the worry, looking at it as a review afterwards, I think the cliff for me is that third QB, is the Allen Mayfield to Trask. But again, these things play out, and we could see things change as we go towards the season. So it's worth taking a chance on when you've got those first 2 positions filled. Is maybe not having a third or a fourth QB might bite me. That's those looking at the things that could bite you. But again, from that position, from where I was at 2, the running back core I'm really happy with. I always think that if you're early in the draft, especially in a super flex, where you almost have to go QB. No, you don't have to, but logic dictates you would in number 2. You worry about running back immediately just because of the depth and where it drops off quite quickly. And I think in Chubb, Jacobs, and Penny as a first 3, I'm delighted with that. So I'm really happy there. So all good for me. I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, I think you've done an absolutely amazing job. So now the hot seat's cooling down a little bit. You can relax. You can sit back, and even though the embers of the hot seat cool down for another week, just reminding everyone listening, thank you so much. If you can give this subscribe on whatever you're listening to, that would help out so much. And remember, even though the hot seat's cooling down, keep you and your teams lit. See you next week.